So we got some interesting news you don't hear every day, which is the FBI got hacked. Specifically, one of their email servers got compromised and was used to send out some interesting spam emails, and the email address it came from was real. So it was not a spoofed email. It legitimately came from the FBI servers. However, the email itself was not real. However, this is not any kind of typical scam or phishing email or anything you see usually getting sent out. So I'll explain what I mean by all that. It's kind of interesting. So what's the deal? What even happened? Well, according to Spam House Project, which is an international organization that tracks spam activity, on Friday night between about 9 p.m. and midnight Pacific time, which is 5 a.m. and 8 a.m. UTC time, the following email was sent out in 2 different waves or at 2 different times to a whole bunch of people and companies. So pretend you are a company receiving this email. It is from eims@ic.fbi.gov. The subject is urgent threat actor and systems. And the content is, our intelligence monitoring indicates exfiltration of several of our virtualized clusters in a sophisticated chain attack. We tried to black hole the transit nodes used by this advanced persistent threat actor. However, there is a huge chance he will modify his attack with fast flux technologies, which he proxies through, that's supposed to say, multiple global accelerators. We identified the threat actor to be Vinny Troia, who, by the way, I had to look him up. He's a security researcher. He's not actually a malicious hacker or anything. They just used his name. Anyway, it continues, whom is believed to be affiliated with the extortion gang, the Dark Overlord. We highly recommend you check your systems and IDS monitoring. Beware, this threat actor is currently working under inspection of the NCCIC. As we are dependent on some of his intelligence research, we cannot interfere physically within 4 hours, which could be enough time to cause severe damage to your infrastructure. Stay safe. U.S. Department of Homeland Security Cyber Threat Detection and Analysis Network Analysis Group. So one thing you noticed is it doesn't include any kind of demands or outrageous claims or offers or anything. It basically just contains a whole bunch of technical jargon nonsense. So what exactly is their goal here then? Well, let's hold off on that for a second and go over some more details about the email. So as Spamhaus mentions, apparently the email list that this email was sent to was just scraped from the ARIN database. And that stands for American Registry for Internet Numbers. And basically it's a database of who is information. So when you buy a website domain, you have to publish some kind of contact information like an email address. So what someone could theoretically do is just go and do searches on a whole bunch of popular websites and get a whole bunch of email addresses unless you use a proxy service that forwards the emails to you, something like that. So they got just a list of public email addresses, basically. The important thing they point out, though, is that the headers are real. They really are coming from FBI infrastructure. They have no name or contact information in the SIG, or the signature. Now, as for what the headers are, if you're not familiar, it's basically information that's sent along with the email for the server side of things, not for you. And it contains things like the sending server's IP address, the sending email address, also some security signature information to verify the sender if that's set up, stuff like that. And depending on whether the sending domain has certain security protocols set up, such as things called SPF and DKIM are 2 examples, then it will be sent along with a signature to prove that it really came from that server. And by the way, I did make a video talking about this kind of stuff in my ultimate guide to spotting spoofed emails. I go over headers and stuff and generally how to tell if an email was spoofed. But I also mentioned that occasionally a email server may actually just get hacked and send out a legitimate, not spoofed email that actually came from the address, but the email itself is fake. And an example I gave was there was a scam email that came from an erie.gov government email address, and it was really from that address, but it was a scam. But in this case, there was no kind of scam or demand or anything like that, so what is their goal? Well, Spamhaus did give 3 possible speculative reasons. The first could be just to cause chaos, make companies scared enough to shut things down, mess stuff up, or just cause the FBI to get flooded with phone calls, which they did, by the way. Another reason could be character assassination of Vinny Troia, the guy mentioned in the email, basically just to make him look bad or troll him. Or as they say, it could just be for the lulz, just to see if you could or show off, or maybe even all of the above. Now, as for how this was accomplished, there is some speculation that perhaps it was done through the web portal of the FBI that they use, maybe a weakness in there, or it's also possible that a user at the FBI was personally hacked and then they used their device to send out the emails. One Twitter user who says they are a former FBI agent also gave a fun fact for context. He says, for context, the FBI used to use ic.fbi.gov for our non-classified email. around the time I left 2015, they dropped the ic.fbi.gov and moved to fbi.gov. Someone may have gained access to the abandoned email infrastructure. So that could be a possibility if they never properly shut down the old one and it was still set up and maybe they weren't doing updates to it because it was old, then that would have had more weaknesses. Now, the talk about this hack seems to mostly still be within the cybersecurity industry and industry circles and not exactly out in the mainstream yet. And it's still not really clear how serious this is, and that would depend on the real reasoning behind it. So depending on how this pans out, it might not get picked up by too much mainstream, although I do think that FBI gets hacked is too juicy of a headline for most news outlets to pass up. Also, I did find a thread on the sysadmin subreddit on Reddit, which was before everyone knew what the heck was going on. And basically the guy's saying this is kind of a weird email from the FBI, and then some other users were saying, hey, we got that too. And presumably these are mostly sysadmins or IT people from different companies. One user said that they had called the FBI help desk to figure out what the deal is with this, and that they were just being flooded and they didn't really know any information, probably because this happened so late at the night local time that there was no one really on staff that could handle it. And one funny and interesting comment I read is the one that said, the FBI email you need to be concerned with is the one that simply asks, you call Special Agent X at your earliest convenience. And that's just for future reference if you ever get contacted by the FBI. So that's really all we know about this at the moment. There's not really anything for the average person to worry about, but if you did happen to get one of these emails or someone at your company mentions it and they're kind of all frantically figuring out what's going on, you can let them know that it was indeed fake. Now, if you guys want to keep watching, the next video I'd recommend is that one I was talking about, the ultimate guide for how to spot spoofed and scam emails. Definitely recommend it. You'll learn a lot. If you want to subscribe, also click the bell next to the subscribe button to enable all notifications, because I only post about twice a week tops, so you don't want those to get lost in the rest of your subscriptions. And by the way, if you want to become a channel member, I always forget to mention this, you can click the join button and get a special badge next to your name and be able to use some cool emojis in the comments. So anyway, thanks so much for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.